Now, my panel today consists of people who are assisting us in the Pacific to support our efforts to making this major transformation possible. And they'll introduce themselves a little bit more before they begin their presentations, but I'd like to first of all explain the flow of our presentation today. So my first guest speaker will be Callum Hanforth. He's going to right beside me, who's our UNDP collaborator for us in the Cook Islands, and we're working to get towards developing our digital transformation strategy, which will set up a roadmap for the Cook Islands government to establish digital services for its citizens. And UNDP has established themselves as strong supporters of this initiative across the Pacific, and Callum will be able to tell us more about his work just in a few minutes as soon as I finish. And my next guest speaker is Jeff Montgomery, to his right, who was formerly New Zealand's Registrar General of Births, Deaths and Marriages, and who recently took on a new role as the Civil Registration Advisor at the Pacific Community, or SPC. And that organisation supports 22 countries and territories across the Pacific region. And one of these countries, of course, that he's been working in has been the Cook Islands, and our special interest in digital identities, which is just one of his new roles within the region. And my final guest speaker will be Nicole Chan, who is an industrial lawyer and currently the Vice Chair of the Digital Transformation Association of Taiwan. And Nicole is a fellow .Asia board member, I just have to mention that. And I was keen to have her join this session because of her long time involvement in digital transformation in Taiwan, whose solid foundation in digital developments has supported rapid economic development within their country. So this is a good model for us in the Pacific. But before we actually start, I just thought that I'd give you an introduction to our session with us by starting off to give you a brief introduction into our journey in the Cook Islands towards digital transformation. And it all started for us in February of this year when I was invited by the ICT unit of the Office of the Prime Minister to organise 3 half-day-long sessions of stakeholder workshops that were going to be coordinated by UNDP. And it was progressing fine until the day of the event when we found that Callum, who was going to take the workshop, was still in Singapore. Due to his flight being cancelled, so that he was not going to arrive in time to do our workshop. However, being the trooper that we were to find him to be, he was prepared to take the 3 daily sessions virtually. This was an effort in itself, which was really creditable, but he was also contending with time zones. And so such was his commitment that for the 3 mornings of the sessions, for a start time of 9 a.m. on Rarotonga, for Callum this was 3 a.m. in Singapore. And he took the sessions until 6 a.m. his time, as if in person. And he had our utmost admiration. But, one of the things about the group that we were working with, when I sent out the invitations to the heads of government departments and to our leaders of business and community groups, I specifically asked that they send people who were actually interested in creating more digital processes and products within their organisation that might help take the Cook Islands towards something becoming more digitally enabled. So we had people from all sectors of the community, and such was the interest that Callum was able to maintain by the presentations and the breakout group activities that he organised from his virtual platform, and which Joseph Mulipola from UNDP Samoa and I coordinated on the ground in the workshop room on Rarotonga. But our attendees were so impressed that they all attended on each of the 3 mornings as planned, ready for each of the consultation activities that took place. But from this initial consultation, Callum produced a digital readiness assessment for the Cook Islands based on the discussions that we'd had, coupled with the results of a survey that was undertaken during the consultation session, plus other information that he gathered from other related activities. And the assessment was, I think it did on slides, and there were 68 slides. So it was a really comprehensive, very impressive summary of where the Cook Islands sits on the continuum of digital readiness. But, you know, pleased to know, Callum finally made it to the Cook Islands last week. And we held 2 more stakeholder sessions, one for the general community, which was really well attended, and probably more so since our Prime Minister asked if he could launch our new ICT policy at the event, because he saw how aligned the digital readiness assessment was with the new policy, and also his own perception of development of digital transformation in the Cook Islands. This was a major breakthrough for us, that he, as the Minister of Telecommunications and ICT, and his Chief of Staff, who is in charge of our office, are both very much behind this new venture for us. So we really do want to make it happen, and we want it to work for us as well. But the second session was that we held was a short 2-hour high-level presentation to government heads of ministries and officials, as well as the leaders of our banking community who play an important role with regards to our economic development. At this session, the leaders were introduced not only to the ICT policy, which was presented by the Chief of Staff too, that was quite interesting, but also our e-commerce, I have a copy here, our e-commerce acceleration work plan, which has just been completed and is also is actually aligned with a regional initiative that's been coordinated by the Pacific Islands Forum of Government Leaders. And they were also introduced to Callum in his digital readiness assessment. But taking these 3 new developments to the heads of our ministries and our community leaders provided a great session of discussion that really did exemplify the importance of communication and stakeholder consultation at all levels before you can embark on something as important and as transformational as this in an island community. And so for this reason, I really appreciate that we've been given this opportunity to share the stage with others from in the Cook Islands, from the Pacific region, the Asian community, as well as an international organisation, to demonstrate how broadly inclusive we in the Pacific need to be to ensure that we successfully achieve our goals for the future of our small Pacific nations. So from there, to our other speakers, I have some questions that I want to pose to each of my panellists to respond to, and following their presentations, we'll open the floor to the audience for their questions. So my first question is to Callum, it's UNDP has been really supportive of digital transformation across the Pacific, even when it is known that there are still practical challenges for many of our small island nations. So what are you seeing happening in this area within the APAC region and the world in general that can perhaps help us to progress with this project?
Thank you, Maureen, and a very, very generous introduction. Thank you, and good morning, everyone. So I'm Callum. I'm a global digital advisor at UNDP, the UN Development Programme. We work across about 170 countries and territories around the world, and I think in every country and territory, digital is a real driver, but also a challenge in some aspects as well. I'm just going to walk you through a few trends that we're seeing around the world, and very happy to pick up questions around these as well. The first is what is being increasingly known as the Twin Technology Challenge. The Twin Tech Challenge is essentially how do you build fundamental digital foundations, so digital public infrastructure, digital inclusion and other aspects, but also keep half an eye on the emerging technologies so countries aren't left behind. So that Twin Tech piece is increasingly driving a lot of discussion and debate and action in many of the countries that we work in. The second point to highlight is we're increasingly seeing a shift away from individual solutions to broader ecosystem development. So how do we involve digital from government, the private sector, civil society including aspects like academia, R&D, and other aspects too, to really make this a whole of society effort to ensure that no one is left behind. I'd also want to talk to a few topics that we've heard definitely in the course of this week so far, and that we see in our work as well, is very much this, the importance of tackling the digital divide. We've known about this for many, many years. There's real issues around obviously foundational connectivity. Many people remain offline, often women and girls as well. But then we're also seeing broader challenges around this digital divide too. The first is funding and financing. So many countries lack sustained digital funding. And then if you look into the private sector, there are populations, again, sadly, often women, who are often underfunded for their developments, their products, their services. So for example, if you're a female founder, then you're much more unlikely to get VC funding in many regions than if you're a male VC team. This inequality, I think there's also risks that we're seeing it being entrenched and exacerbated. The metaverse is a really interesting example of this. When this launched 2 years ago, you had a land grab of often quite rich prospectors going online and buying up a lot of the metaverse. So there's also kind of risk that we're kind of creating and entrenching new inequalities as new technology develops as well. In the region, we're also doing quite a lot of work on tackling disinformation and misinformation. So last month, we launched a big project across Tonga, the Solomon Islands, Fiji, and Micronesia, looking at how we can work with civil society to tackle the growing challenges of disinformation. In many countries that we're speaking to and working in, issues around COVID-19 misinformation, cyberbullying, harassment, online scams, this stuff is becoming more and more pervasive. And it's great that countries get increased connectivity, but then this increased connectivity can also accelerate the pace and the challenge of some of these harms as well. Just before I wrap up, I'd like to end on a slightly more positive note than the disinformation side. Two aspects to highlight. Firstly, we're seeing some really exciting new ways of thinking. So elements like donut economics, where we're looking beyond just measurements of GDP and looking at broader welfare and other aspects, particularly in the context of digital, are really exciting. We're also seeing a focus on what we call lean data. So not just big data, but the lives and livelihoods behind data points. Like how do we spend time with users to actually understand how digital is having an impact? And then also we're very keen to talk to countries more about what we're seeing, a concept called environment-centered design. So moving beyond just the user and looking at actually how digital impacts on the environment. And there's some really exciting stuff here where we're seeing where, for example, websites being powered by solar power to reduce cloud emissions, design of websites to make them draw down less data and less power. So there's a really exciting movement here that we see has really exciting potential. And then finally, just to land on that last point, is the potential that we see for digital in the region and beyond. We're seeing digital really transform how governments are delivering services. We're seeing digital create new products, new services, new industries, new opportunities, new lives and livelihoods, which is really exciting. For us at the UN, 70% of the SDGs have a strong digital foundation, and the other 30% could be benefit by digital as well. And then also we're seeing real appetite from people about the potential of digital. Maureen mentioned the Digital Readiness Assessment. This is a product at UNDP that we've ran across about 16 small island states now. It also includes a public survey where we actually ask the public, do you see efforts of digital in your country being bold? And actually many members of the public want their governments and their other partners to be even bolder. So we see this really, really exciting license and appetite for even deeper, more accelerated and more expansive digital transformation as well. You know, I'll pause there, but very happy to answer any questions about this or our work more broadly. Thank you.
I'll ask you your question. Got to get to it first. I mentioned before how Jeff is now working in sort of like a real flash job in SBC. But Jeff, from a transformational perspective, a national identity system, which has been a very strong interest of mine for a long time, and I realise it's already been proposed for several Pacific Island states to enable citizens to more easily and securely access government online services. But in reality, is this a simple tool to develop for a small island state? And what are the enabling conditions that would need to be in place to make it successful?
Thanks, Maureen. By way of introduction, my name is Jeff Montgomery. I'm currently the Civil Registration and Vital Statistics Advisor for the Pacific Community, which is a membership-based organisation that provides scientific and technical advice to 22 states and territories across the Pacific. And previously I was for 10 years the Registrar General of Births, Deaths and Marriages in New Zealand. So in answering the question, I kind of draw on those two pieces of experience. Over the 10 years that I was in the role in New Zealand, we managed to move almost all of our services 100% online. So the ability to register a birth and get a birth certificate, with the exception of the certificate itself, is entirely online in New Zealand. The ability to apply for a passport or renew a passport, again, fully online, and to become a New Zealand citizen. That can also now be done entirely online. So we achieved quite a lot. However, the thing that was really difficult and we never quite achieved before I finished was a digital online identity. That's particularly difficult to achieve, even in a country like New Zealand, where you need both a high level of uptake by the population to make it economical. So you need lots of New Zealanders in that case to be using a digital identity. And to get that, you need lots of organisations who require that digital identity to access services on a regular basis. And without both of those components, we didn't get there. So for those of you who might be from New Zealand, you'll be familiar with RealMe, the challenges with RealMe, which is a digital government online identity, struggled for those three reasons. But drawing on my work in the Pacific community, a key enabler for all of this is civil registration systems. So most people won't know the technical term. Most of you will know it more as births, deaths and marriages. And it's essentially the continuous, permanent, compulsory and universal registering of key life events. That's the United Nations definition of it. It's a multi-agency approach. So it's not one agency, it usually starts in the health sector when an event occurs, such as a birth or a death, and then transfers into a civil registration agency. And then the product of that, the data or the identity credentials, are then used by a number of different agencies across government, whether that be the voting enrolment system, passports, school enrolments, the health services will often use the civil registration data for their planning, for their service delivery, and ultimately for the identity of the citizens in the country. For the system to work well, it needs to have both ends of the spectrum. It needs to be a birth system for registering babies, but also a death registration system. So an opening and a closing of the identity. Most countries in the Pacific do not have good coverage of both of those systems. So of the 22 countries and territories in the Pacific, it ranges from 15% birth registration, so less than 1 in 10, 15% to 100%. And for death registration, it's even worse. It ranges from 2% in a country like Papua New Guinea, also up to 100% in other countries such as the Cook Islands would be an example of a country which is up at 100%. But many other countries float around the 70 to 80% mark. So that means that their populations don't have legally recognised identities. And in countries such as Papua New Guinea, for example, it's really uncertain how many people live in the country because you don't have a count at the start through the birth registration and you don't have a count at the end through death registration. So there's three broad approaches that we're taking to address this in the Pacific. So for countries like Papua New Guinea, the key focus is on completeness and coverage of the system. And it's pretty basic. It's about getting out there and getting babies registered and having deaths registered as well. And a key technology component of that is mobile kits. So in places like Papua New Guinea, it's about getting 400 kits using people like UNDP and other agencies to fund those kits to go out to the villages and islands and actually register babies and adults in the villages. In other countries, such as the work we're doing in Niue and the Cook Islands, it's around moving a well-operating paper-based system online. So the work we're doing in Niue at the moment is moving from a largely paper-based system to an electronic system, and having those systems interoperable between the different parts of government. So having the data flow electronically from the health system to the civil registration system and on to other agencies. And then the third area is for places like New Zealand, which already has a strong online service, and it's around joining up services. So we have a product called Smart Start, which is a product that parents use from the point that they learn that they're pregnant for the 9 months of the pregnancy and right through the child's first 6 years to do all of the services they require for that child. So health information, birth registration, enrolling in school, the whole digital identity journey for that child is done online. So to answer your question, Maureen, the key enablers, firstly, legislation needs to be in place to ensure that civil registration is occurring. You need community engagement, so you need members of the public actually engaging in that system and doing what they need to do to register their babies or to record their deaths. And then the final part is the technology to do that. So it's a three-legged stool. And yeah. I'll leave it there. Happy to answer any questions about anything later. Thanks.
Nicole. One of the biggest gaps that prevents Pacific nations from easily engaging in digital transformation is the lack of an enabling environment, and that includes legislation. What do you think Pacific governments need to know before they can even start to think about implementing a digital transformation strategy? And how would you recommend that they go about identifying what is required?
Thank you, Maureen. Good morning, everyone. I'm Nicole Chen from Taiwan. It's my honor to be here to share some experience for Taiwan at the works of digital transformation. I'm going to use a few slides. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Actually, as our panelist has mentioned that. I have already participated some international project relating to bridge the digital divide and create the digital opportunity for a long time, including the APEC Digital Opportunity Center project. Yeah, so I visited PNG twice. Yeah, it's a very special experience. Yeah, so for Taiwan, there is, maybe the experience is a little bit different from other countries, but I think it can take as an example. Yeah, in Taiwan, there is a national scale digital transformation program. We named it Digital Nation and Innovation Economic Development Program. Yet not only limited to the digital transformation, but also we need to cultivate our innovation and for the digital economy development goal. So we set up some goals, including the digitalization. It means the optimizing the communication network, and the innovation, expanding digital economy, and the governance. I think this one is most important, yeah, because we need to set up some mechanism and make the regulation and legislative, of course, including the data governance and some other essential legislation. And another one is the inclusion. We need to focus on the social impact and pay attention to the equal digital right for every citizen. So you can see on the slide the aims of course, I share some experience about the industrial digital transformation, but it also can suit for the government digital transformation. The aims is to, at the national level, we would like to developing a digital economy, and the industry level, moving up to the value chain, yeah. And the enterprise level, we need to cultivate a globally competitive digitalized enterprise for individual enterprise. So there are a few key successful factors we are focusing. The first one is the information. Yeah, because we need to improve in awareness of the culture of the current digital status. I think it is very important for digital transformation to transform. It's all about the mindset transformation. Maybe the technology is not the most important issue. Yeah, I think the mindset is most important. So recognizing the benefits from digital transformation is important. So we need to promote awareness. And the second one is the leadership and the strategy. I think the digital transformation is not only the works for the MIS, but it's for the high level leadership, including the government and the enterprise. So new digital mindset, and we need to set up the blueprint and the roadmap for digital transformation, even for the country or for the nation or for the single enterprise. And the resources, of course, we need resources to do this kind of works. So adapting emerging digital technologies, we need to reallocate all the resources and the funding issues, as our panelists has already mentioned, that maybe including the international funding and VC and others. And fourth, the digital skills. Yeah, the digital transformation is a journey, not only a work or a program. So we need to cultivate our people internally or externally, and set up so many capacity building works for every participants. Yeah, so upskill talents and appropriate training program. Yeah, so right now in Taiwan, we set up so many programs, even in the government or in the enterprise. Yeah, and the fifth, the cross-industry coordination. Yeah, because the digital transformation is kind of a paradigm shift for industry. It's totally different, a changing of the way how you doing business, how you communicate to each others. So the core of the digital transformation and the new economy is the platform and the data. So it's a kind of a cross industry coordination is very important. So we need to build up some cross domain know-hows, yeah, and try to build up the mechanism for different sectors, including public and private and the different domain to work together. So that's the the aim. And yeah, it's a little bit. Yeah, 3 arrows. To help industry success at digital transformation, we need to strengthen the core values, continue to strengthen core business value, and expand to high value added sectors. That's in Taiwan. We try to upgrade our value chain from manufacturing to the service level. Yeah. And the second one is smart agile process, adapting new digital technologies to improve efficiency and the services quality. Yeah, but I think we can adapt the technology only if we need that. We don't want to do digital transformation just for technology. We adapt the technology because we need that. So it needs to be very cautious to do that. We doing these works not for technology. Yes, for our value, for our goal, we are going to purchasing. And the third arrow is digital marketing management. We leverage in digital marketing tools to better services and to our key customers and business partner. So we set up, it is very important to know how we are positioning right now. Yeah, for industry and for enterprise in Taiwan, we set up a kind of a index. Yeah, we name it Taiwan Digital Transformation, TDX. That's an index framework, including 3 dimensions. One is digital input. It measures enterprise investment in digital tools and resources, even including the cultivation of the talents. And the second part is the digital maturity. The index can evaluate enterprise digital maturity level, what level the digital the enterprise is positioning right now. And the third one is digital impact. Of course, it's a journey, so we are focusing on the second maturity, digital maturity index. It includes the people, process, and the tech. Those three factors, from our point of view, are the key successful factors. For example, the consensus within the government, consensus within the enterprise, and the vision and the strategy. And in the process, it includes the internal process and the external process. I think the flow, the domain, the working flow, no matter manufacturing or services providers, the working flow are very important. How to make them smoothly flow and upgrade to the value created chain ecosystem. And the tech, it related to what kind of technology you are adapt. Of course, the data safety and the system integration are very important within this index. So the index journey, it is good for the small and medium enterprise to evaluate. So we see many enterprise, they are from the hesitation level and to adapt the TDX, how to evaluate and clarify what is their position, and then set up goal and reallocate their resources and then take action. So I think, and another issue is for the data governance. Because although we have already adapted some program for to let the enterprise or government get on the track of the digital transformation, the journey of the digital transformation. But I think the infrastructure, not only limited to the physical infrastructure, but the some kind of soft power infrastructure is important. That's regulation and legislation. Of course, the data, as I mentioned before, the flow and the data and the platform will be the core of the new kind of model. So I think they are. I think it is very complicated, as we have heard during these 2 days. I think right now the problem are very complicated. Because it's caused from different layers and it kind of matrix problems. So we need to set up the good data governance mechanism, including the personal data protection and the open data policy and the data governance procedure. Of course, the broad Data Act. So I think that is very important. Because we are now facing the challenges. We are now almost going to the 6G era, right? And the IoT is everywhere, and even the AI has already emerged. So I think the 6G network is the AI network. So beyond technology aspect, the adoption of new technologies raised many new legal policy and the regulatory challenges, broad and complex in scope. So one of the biggest challenges brought about the new technology is the question of trust. So how to build up the trust environment, how can I say, as we mentioned about trustworthy AI and responsible AI, that's important as these technology are being deployed across various sectors. Cybersecurity is a primary condition for trustworthy AI and technology. And AI may open new maybe we need to avoid the manipulate and abuse of the new technology. So I think the security, data protection, and the data governance and the protection of privacy is very important. And there is a need to discuss the digital forensics and in regard to the new technology. Yeah, because it is related to the privacy and the data protection. So I think, there are so many challenges. So if we are going to set up some national program for the digital transformation, I think it's important, and maybe the TTX can share some experience to you. But besides that, the environment and the soft power of the infrastructure, we need to set up some appropriate legislation and mechanism. That's important. Yeah, so that is my sharing. Yes, thank you.
Okay, right, so this is your chance to have a say, and I know, like, for example, I'm just having a look around and I sort of see several of my Pacific colleagues in the audience, and I know that some of them have also are actually also on this digital transformation journey, because I heard about them during the first 2 days. And so if you have any comments or any questions, please.
Okay. Hello everyone. My name is Isan, and maybe I would tell something about people on my rural area. It's like some small island in my country on a rural area. There's something about these people. The people there think about have a slowly life and have a conventional life is still giving them a money. So yeah, about the digital transformation, it's quite far from them. And then about the infrastructure, it's very basic for them. They use it for a basic activity like watching a YouTube and something like that, but they don't take it seriously to have some economic issues to giving more value for their life, to give some more money with the application. So what do you think about maybe not I don't know about the Cook Island, but maybe there's some similarity, but there are some rural area and there are some isolating island. How we can change the mind of the people for the small island or rural area about the digital is very fast forward now, and we need to able to ready to take it granted everywhere you are, and then it have some value for your life to give more money about the next future. I guess something like that.
Just to sort of look at it from a native perspective, with Pacific Islands, very laid back, but it doesn't. I mean, the digital world is already imposed on us already, and I mean, we're in the Cook Islands, for example, we're very much we're quite digitally advanced, and so it doesn't matter that that people may not. And I mean, I know there are still people who don't have they don't. There are too many. I mean, there are so many people for example, on Rarotonga, who don't have internet in their homes. So the only time they actually sort of like have the internet is actually sort of like through a cafe or something like that. But everyone has a phone. Okay, honestly, kids have a phone. So they might not have a landline in their home, but they'll have a mobile. They'll have a smartphone too. So like they're becoming digital natives, even though they're it doesn't matter where they are. And like, for example, we have 13 outer islands, and the outer islands are also being connected to 4G as we speak. And so that they too are sort of like getting really speedy internet. So yeah, life is changing. Yeah, it doesn't sort of get over.
Thanks, Wayne. I think from many of the work that we've done in rural areas, I think there's 3 points that stand out to me. The first is that we need to make digital real and relevant to these people. Often we talk in the abstract about AI, 5G, big data, but explain this is how you can improve access to public services, how you can make more customers for your business. As Jeff mentioned as well, elements like vital statistics can have huge multipliers for people's lives and their livelihoods. The second, and a lot of work that we do is obviously on the skills piece, like how do you build skills and literacy, but also look at kind of community champions. So, find people in the community who are trusted ambassadors and advocates for digital. Often government and others may not have credibility or relationships in these communities, but a local farmer or a village chief or an elder can be a really powerful conduit for this piece. The final thing is, I think we need to recognize that digital is not homogenous. It's really varied depending on the context. So really engaging with, what is relevant, what is the way of doing digital in some of these communities. So things like business models for digital products and services may need to be changing. How you engage with the market may need to change. One good parallel is we do a lot of work in agricultural development. And if you're a smallholder farmer, your income is very, very small. So you've got very little income to actually invest in, drones, tractors, this kind of stuff. So we increasingly see things like subscription models popping up. So there's a really cool startup in Africa called Hello Tractor, because they know that farmers can't afford tractors, so they have a community tractor and you hire it by the hour or you pay a subscription to it. Increasingly with digital tech as well, there's probably models like this that we can look at, because often being able to afford access to digital services is not going to happen. But can we look at new ways of working, new business models that could be quite exciting for these kind of communities too?
Just picking up a little bit on your question, and thank you very much for it. There are, of course, some islands of the Pacific and some locations where there is no electricity. So then the internet becomes completely irrelevant. And this is an experience I had last week in Papua New Guinea. Even in the capital city, the power goes off on a regular basis, like daily the power goes off. So, there are some other challenges before you even get to the issue of 4G, 5G, 6G in a number of the Pacific nations. So I just put that on the table as well. In Papua New Guinea, for birth registration, the mobile kits I mentioned earlier, they have battery packs and they have solar panels that they use. It's a 2-hour walk from the nearest town into a village, and it's not walking down a highway or even a track. So there's all sorts of challenges that need to be addressed. So thanks.
Yes, thank you for the question. As I have mentioned, that the technology is not the purpose, not the goal. So it all depends on what kind of value you are going to create and what kind of business you are going to do and what kind of life you are going to have. So I think we see a technology as tool and how to empowerment to our business, our life, and our value. Yeah. So for example, it is in Taiwan, there are also rural areas, our East Coast, Hualien, Taitung, and it is, I think, use technology as a tool is easy for tourism and agriculture and other specified domains. So it all depends on how you create your value. So it is easy for us to go to Hualien and Taitung for travel, and there are new kind of a digital nomad. Have you heard about that? Workation. You can work everywhere and live a life just like vacation. Yeah, that's workation. Yeah. So I think maybe we can create some new model for living and for doing business. So technology is not the purpose. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
So, and then, because I'm right here. Sure, absolutely.
Kia ora tātou, thank you very much, our panel members, and hello to everyone. My name is Wetu and I'm a council member of Internet New Zealand along with Jeff. Now, my question today to the panel and perhaps anyone who's here is, in Aotearoa, we have accepted that AI and the internet is part of our life, but as an ethnic minority within our own country, we are now struggling with the question of how are we going to protect our cultural knowledge online. So that's my question. Are you aware of any policies that anyone in this room may be working with? We're currently engaged in many government departments asking for policy papers and research on this. How can we protect our cultural knowledge against AI, if you like, against robotics, basically people who do not live our values, but are now fast becoming the experts thanks to this wonderful technology?
Okay, so who would like to?
Just very briefly, what you're talking about, that one of the things that we're actually sort of like very concerned about, of course, is ensuring that our culture is sort of like maintained in light of the, you know, sort of like the other invasions of other technologies that are bound. But I think that I don't think that even in the Cook Islands we've actually got anything that's specifically a policy on this, and it's definitely something that we'll add that to the list of things that always seem to be building up on, and it's something that we need to incorporate into the strategy in regards to, you know, how we can maintain this. So is there?
I can try. It's a really important question. As a bit of background, we ran a survey across about 50 island states over the course of last year to young people 18 to 35 in these island states, because we recognise that as quite an underheard voice. Recognising that, and this is a digital survey, so we used WhatsApp, Telegram, and Facebook Messenger as a kind of chatbot to engage these young people, and they talked about the benefits of digital communication, businesses. But many of them also highlighted issues of alienation, but also a loss of heritage and cultural value. We're going to actually release a report on this next month on this. And that was a really interesting piece. That it was a really strong factor across this young people. They want to become more connected to their cultural heritage through digital, but they also don't want digital to take away that heritage either. And there's another opportunity that they also saw is how can we actually share this heritage with the world? So we see a few, for example, island state singers, you know, are now trending quite heavily on social media and getting their music into the global community. So there's power and potential there too. Firstly, very happy to link you up to some colleagues at UNESCO who obviously lead on the kind of cultural piece within the UN. But there are a few things that we'll see and that could be relevant. The first is, how do you make these tools align with cultural aspects? So the Gates Foundation and Mozilla have a project called Common Voice, and they've been funding training data sets in Swahili and other East African languages to actually start building this kind of database to make sure that actually these voices and perspectives aren't left behind. We're doing quite a bit of work on this as well, including you know, non-spoken languages, like how do you enshrine some of this stuff into the next generation. The second is also, how do we protect this stuff for future generations? And we haven't seen answers to that. We talk often about things like the metaverse, which is interesting, but I don't think is enough yet. And also the metaverse may even be a 5, 10, 15-year proposition. You know, we're looking at 50, 100 years potentially. One interesting parallel that I've seen is in northern Norway, you have what's called the Seed Vault, the Svalbard Seed Vault, which is managed by the International Crop Trust. And what they've been doing is they take a seed from every community around the world and they store it, and then they can often preserve seeds for future generations. And the first time this was actually used was, I think, 2 years ago in Syria, where they actually withdrew seeds from the seed bank to germinate a crop that had actually been lost in Syria. they have it in northern Norway because it's very cold and they can store data very well. They're also starting to build equivalent databases for music, for culture, for other aspects. So how do we protect this stuff for 200, 300, 400 years? We're not looking at cloud, we're looking at microfilm. So there's this kind of protection piece that I think is really exciting too. So it's a very long way of saying I don't think there's many answers out there, but very happy to connect to other people working in this space. That could be quite useful. Anyone else? It's quite a tough question. So.
Yeah, thank you for the question. Yes, it's really a tough question. So that is why I mentioned that when we plan the national scale plan, from one hand, we need to make the usage of the technology, but from the other hand, we need to provide the mechanism of protection of the traditional heritage and the traditional culture, especially under the cultural diversity philosophy, right? So I think we set up some legislation, including the copyright and IPR protection and database protection and something like that. So at the same time, we can not only push the usage of the technology, but also we need to provide this kind of mechanism to protect our traditional culture. Yeah.
Okay, well, we have 5 minutes left, so I think what we might do is just have a bit of a summary from everyone. I'm really pleased with the questions that have come from the audience. Have been, you know, it's been great to sort of like get an idea of people's perspectives of Pacific Islands and sort of like what our expectations are. And I sort of meant to make mention of the fact that in the Cook Islands, for example, as we're actually sort of like moving towards this digital transformation, our outer islands, 13 little islands, and sort of like they range in population from about 50 on one island to about sort of like a 1,500 on one of the larger ones. But all the outer islands are 100% solar powered. And that was one of the things that was sort of like made, was one of the sort of like building blocks towards going into digital government and government services, and making sure that our outer island populations were also enabled with regards to their contacts with government. So the electricity is on the islands, and now they're going towards improving the services, sort of internet services. So this is just on our island, in our country, and I know that it's also happening in other countries within the Pacific. So, you know, the region is becoming more digital. The region is becoming sort of like more sort of accepting towards going on online, and we at the same time we need to, as Betty said, we need to protect those things that are important to us as a country.
Thanks, Maureen, and thank you all for your questions and your participation. From my side, just 3 quick closing points. I think it's been highlighted today and also through the conference is that often technology is a comparatively easy bit. The harder bit is the mindset shift, the behavior change, how we break down silos, how we make this stuff real and relevant to people. So not being led by solutions, but focusing on people's needs and problems and the context. The second is we do a lot of work around what we call digital public infrastructure and digital public goods. Not every country is on this digital journey. Absolutely no country has figured it out, but we can learn from each other, and we can even borrow or steal with pride from each other as well. So if there's a component that works well elsewhere, like a civil registration component, can we open source that and use that in another country? So a lot of work that we've been doing in India around the G20 presidency is around digital public infrastructure. So these shared components that can be applied between countries so people don't have to start from scratch each time. And for me, particularly looking in the region, there's probably a really exciting regional approach here. How do you bring countries together through economies of scale so that you're not all procuring from the same people, and you've got a more strategic and regional basis for this stuff as well. And then finally, we publish each year what we call a Human Development Report, which is tracking the state of human development in every country around the world. And it highlighted last year what we call an uncertainty complex. So challenges of polarization, distrust, mistrust, climate change, conflict is creating this real issue of uncertainty around where we go as a global community. We've also seen reversals in human development progress in about 90% of countries around the world, and 2020 saw the first increases in global extreme poverty for 2 decades. So we've got a real challenge globally to face. But in our research, we've also found 3 I's that I think are quite relevant and particularly driven by digital. The first is insurance. So we need social protection. So we need to support those most at risk of being left behind. And digital can be a really powerful tool here for payments, for other mechanisms. The second is we need investments. So digital, again, can be driving new ways of funding and financing, crowdfunding, venture capital, patient capital, and other aspects. And then the third I is innovation. So we need new ways of working, thinking, and living to actually try to tackle some of this uncertainty and to hopefully get us back on track towards the Sustainable Development Goals. To those 3 I's, I'd also add one more, which is inspiration. We really want to look to communities like you all to learn what's happening, what's working, so we can learn from this and also champion it too. So always keen to keep in touch. Let us know what you're working on, and also very keen to connect you with others in our network as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Callum. I think the main takeaway that I've taken from today is really around the diversity within the Pacific. So there are 22 countries and territories. Each one is completely different. They range in size from 2,000 in Tokelau to maybe 9 million, maybe 10 million, maybe 11 million in Papua New Guinea, depending on what statistics you look at. The languages are diverse, and also the infrastructure and the conditions in each of those countries is diverse. So when we're talking about national digital transformation on small island developing states, we're talking about a range of different circumstances. And the second point I'd like to leave us with is digital is not always the answer. And if you don't have a good civil registration system in your country, if you're not counting all of the babies and you're not counting the people when they pass away, then you can't have a digital identity system, particularly death registration. If the identities are not turned off when someone passes away, then the digital identity system is rubbish. So you've got to get the basics right first. Thanks.
Yes, although we are talking about the technology-driven transformation, but I always bear in mind that the most important thing is the value we are going what is the value we are going to create, and what kind of a life we are going to have. So I think when we are on the journey of the digital transformation, we need to make balance for using technology and the inclusion, and set up appropriate governance mechanism for all the works and the implementation. Then we can we just see technology as a tool and not the purpose. Yeah, that is what I always bear in mind. Thank you.
So just to close, thank you so much for being with us. I hope you enjoyed your hour with us, and that you enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.
And it's my voice again. Please do remember to put any of the highlight issues and interesting discussions on our platform, comment.aprigf.asia. Help us shape the synthesis document for this year. Up next in the same room, starting at 10:10, is Bridging the Communications Divide. So please stay in the room. It's going to be a great session. I'll turn back to you.
Brilliant, thank you. You easier for me, and then I can get to more all good. Thank you.
This is the mic. I'll help you run the mic. This is forward, this is back. Killian.
Where do you want us from? Yeah, I know. Water. Where's? Yeah, same. Right. Do you want a bottle of water? Or have you got one?
Yours is the only one. Got it. All right, we're all good.
Next week, isn't it?
Okay.
Once we do that, you'll let us know you're ready, you can just start. No changes on it.
I hope so. This is what I wrote up. I think it's correct.
absolute start.
Welcome everyone to the next session, which we're calling Bridging the Communications Divide. And what this session about is really going back to TORS and to say the issue for the internet is access to the internet, and it's more than just communications technology. It's a range of issues, and I think many of those issues have been raised in the past 3 days. We're going to revisit them, but we're going to actually start, first of all, with technology. Although, wait a minute, we're going to do something else here. Next slide. Okay. Meaningful connectivity. There are only 2 people, not 3 up here. Daniel couldn't make it in person, apologies from that. And we're missing Daniel simply because the perspective he adds is a very interesting one. He's speaking for the First Nations people who have a range of interesting issues, cultural issues, language issues, as well as distant issues. But we're talking about communities that are in the far reaches of this country, difficult to connect, but then with their own additional language and cultural issues. So let me introduce Dr. Paul Brooks. He's Mr. Technology. We're not going to go into all of the qualifications, it's just that he's responsible for communications in Australia. We'll leave it there. Andrew, who is CEO of the ACAN, the Australian Communications Consumer Action Network, the peak body for consumer advocacy for telecommunications. So he's across a range of issues that are between individuals and connectivity to the internet. Myself, Policy Chair of Internet Australia. When I saw this chart, and you can breeze through it, have a look, I thought, oh, well, it's all summed here. And then I have a second look at it and realize there are probably more issues raised by this chart than answered. If you look at the top line, it's Australia, and we look pretty good. In terms of internet users, we're close to 96%, but what that doesn't tell you is that's actually 95.5% of people for 35% of this country. That's a lot of empty space, and that's a lot of places where there isn't the internet. You look at homes connected, that's down to 88%, and that's actually dropping. If you look at the latest statistics from our own regulator, the Communications Media Authority, you realize those figures are dropping. Perhaps the most interesting of the indicators are mobile. And sadly, that's the most important one, because nationally as well as internationally, people are using mobile phones. They are not using home connections. Home connections are dropping even in Australia. Certainly in the world, people have mobile phones before they have home phones, and sometimes before they have homes. So that doesn't tell us very much. We're looking at high-speed broadband. What Paul's going to say is we don't need it anymore. And he's going to explain why he says that. Fixed broadband, the cost, it's almost becoming irrelevant because people, as I say, are looking for mobile broadband. There are some interesting statistics too, and these are forward-looking. I'm looking at the internet users in primary schools. To me, the most interesting statistic wasn't Australia, it was the Cook Islands. 100% of users in primary and secondary, which says the kids are using in a way that is not true in some of the other countries. So if you look at this chart, it can tell you about the divergence of facilities of access, but it can also tell you about the trends. But as I say, perhaps the most important thing it can't tell you is about mobile ownership and mobile access. which are perhaps some of the most important statistics. And there's one statistic that just isn't there at all. This is a cartoon that Paul provided to me. I'll just read it if you can. This is, let's just say, a middle-aged lady going up to the information hub saying, okay, one more time, go home, log on to our website from your computer, create an account, purchase your ticket with your credit or debit card, download the ticket to a smartphone, then come back at the allocated time. Just part of what easier and more convenient don't you get? That's a way of saying that increasingly schools, governments, private enterprise is relying on us and our access to the internet. And it's not always easy. One of these sessions very early in the first day was talking about coding and the fact that increasingly people are using the internet and our alleged access to it to provide us with services that are impossible to access. And if you're talking about bridging the connectivity, one of the most important things is coming up with systems that work for everyone. Now you can talk about your mum accessing the bank, but there are many, many stories about systems that are supposed to work that rely on us to make them work, and they don't. And that's just part of the connectivity story. But we're going to start with Paul. This is something that came out of UN study. It was looking at connectivity and indicating that connectivity is more than just access to a transmission. It's all of the issues involved in access. Yes, it's about infrastructure, but it's also about things like cost of the service, cost of the equipment. It's about the device itself. Is it usable? Can you buy it somewhere? Does it work for you? Does it work for you if you have a disability? Or is that actually shutting you off for connectivity? Do you have the skills? And increasingly, a lot of people don't have the skills. So the transmission system is there, the skills aren't, and you're cut off. And I suppose the last and the thing that's become front of mind for so many people, security and safety. And it's part of the reason that people are not going to be using the internet, that it's now scary and it's not safe. So the first issue that Paul will cover is actually getting the connectivity, the transmission. But then Andrew's next job is to ask the harder questions.
Thank you, Holly. Yes, my name is Paul Brooks. I've been building telecommunications networks for far too many years than I care to admit to. My elevator pitch is that I build the internet, and people talk to me and say, what, just by yourself? So of course not. But I've been involved in projects designing and building and laying submarine cables around the Pacific Islands area. Currently working with the United Nations on trying to get up a Pacific Islands internet exchange for all of the Pacific Islands area. I've worked on satellite networks. I've worked on very large scale terrestrial broadband networks. So the connectivity is the thing. And my policy role and my work with Internet Australia and ISOC, for the last couple of decades, we've been trying to bridge the digital divide by getting people who are not connected and getting some infrastructure there so that they can connect. Increasingly though, that problem is solved. And the problems, the way that we've solved them in Australia, many of them are actually similar to the challenges faced in Pacific Island nations. Some of them are different. But Australia as a great proving ground for many of the models of achieving connectivity due to the vast spaces with nothing in between that has happened to be dirt rather than water, but the challenges are the same for a telecommunications network. So submarine cables, most of the Pacific Island nations are connected by submarine cables. It used to be the goal was to get a cable to every nation. Now every nation has a cable, and then the concerns are reliability and resilience. What happens if that cable goes down? And we saw that with the volcano recently in Samoa, I think it was, which cut the cable for many, many months. So the challenge over the last, say, 5 or 6 years has been funding and connecting a second cable, creating a diverse path. So if one cable breaks, there's another cable, another path for the internet on cable. Most of those islands were previously connected by satellite. Satellite is great because you can connect everywhere, but the latency, the time delays really restricts the types of traffic, the types of communication you can go over it. It also has the unfortunate effect that in most cases, the satellite link goes up and then comes down in the United States. So you have this weird situation where you have a Pacific island nation of multiple far-flung islands where it's actually easier and higher performance to get from each nation to the United States than it is from each island within the nation. Microwave technology is great for bridging places on land and over water, but only really if those islands are within 50 to 80 kilometres or so. Any further than that, and the curvature of the Earth. There are real physical challenges, real physics challenges with getting connectivity. So connectivity is a requirement for using the internet, but it's not the only requirement for people to be able to meaningfully use the internet. And until recently, as a telecommunications network designer for connectivity network, satellite was your least favourite option. It's what you used if you couldn't get anything else. But in the last couple of years, I've been working with low Earth orbit satellites. Starlink is the well-known one that most people have. We have it in Australia. Many more countries are starting to get it, starting to get the licensing for it. And it is magic. It is a game changer. If your country does not have it, take it from me. I've been working with it a lot. It has the benefits of satellite in that you can get connectivity anywhere with a satellite dish you can carry in your car, you can carry it in a backpack, you can connect up to a car battery. Most of the Ukraine war is being run over many thousands of Starlink terminals strapped to the side of the tanks and armoured personnel carriers because the Russians knocked out all of the communications technology and the internet. A lot of those terminals are powered by car batteries. Learned about this in a talk last year at an Australian internet conference by some very clever people in New Zealand that designed a DC power supply that will run Starlink off that rather than a 240 volt mains power. Anyway, it combines the connect everywhere aspect of satellite, but the latency and the performance of the link is the same as a mobile phone. And I've done the trial of flicking a standard phone handset into airline mode, turn on Wi-Fi calling, it connects to the Wi-Fi of the Starlink, runs over the satellite, connects back in and makes a mobile phone call to your local carrier with performance that is absolutely indistinguishable from a normal mobile phone call. And it'll do that from the middle of the outback, it'll do that from the middle of the ocean, it'll do that from Zimbabwe to my local phone carrier here in Australia. It is absolutely a game changer. The important thing to understand is that Starlink is only the first constellation, and there's 5,000 satellites out of 12,000 satellites that are potentially in orbit, but there are 3 other low Earth orbit competing constellations from Amazon, from Microsoft, and a couple others I can't even remember, that will be going up over the course of the next 5 years. So that will introduce competition, which will drive the prices down. The main problem with Starlink and a lot of these low Earth orbit satellites coming up is not the technology, it's the cost. About 130 Australian dollars a month to run this thing. But cost is something that can be changed very quickly by a government subsidy, by a voucher system, or by, it turns out, Elon Musk deciding, yeah, they're good people, we'll throw them 100 terminals for free, which is what they did to get Samoa back online after the volcano, to connect all the government departments with a signal coming up and coming back down in Fiji, I believe, because none of the earth stations in Samoa were going to work. So a disaster recovery platform like nothing on earth. Technology in Australia, the regional and rural communications divide, Starlink and low Earth orbit fixes it. In Pacific Island nations, where you've got far-flung islands that can't be connected back to the main island locally and are connecting via satellite, Starlink, low Earth orbit satellites fixes that. So the technology aspect of connecting is largely solved. Now it's time to move on to the other layers, and that's where our advocacy in Australia is starting to move beyond the getting the unconnected connected, because basically everyone can connect now, to those next order of things: affordability, devices, skills. And the cartoon was prompted by my mother, who ran into a challenge with her local bank trying to make a payment because the bank changed their authentication system and requires her to download an app on a phone. She doesn't know how to download a phone. An app. She can barely use a mobile phone to make a phone call. But the bank is expecting the users to know, or to be able to get help or have someone to advise them for how to set up the authentication mechanism to get a one-time password, an SMS code, something that makes the banking system something that we can use because we're au fait with the technology, but there are people in the community that are not, and our institutions, our banking institutions, our government institutions are making assumptions that just because an online method is available, that they can then shut down all the other methods that somebody who cannot access the online method can't use. And on that note, I'll pass on to Andrew.
No, you won't. Paul, you've mentioned that a country has to sign up to Starlink. So what if you live in a country that hasn't signed up to the satellite?
Okay, so that's generally a regulatory and a licensing issue. Most companies have a telecommunications licensing regime where you need to have a license to be a telecommunications provider. The Starlink system is a telecommunications network. The system goes up and comes back down, generally in the same country. And generally the requirement, and the volcano disaster was an outlier, that means that the Starlink network provider needs to get a license in your country. There are many countries where the system is not licensed. For example, in Papua New Guinea, Starlink is not licensed to operate. The consequence of that is, if you put a Starlink on a ship and that ship sails out off the northern tip of Australia towards Papua New Guinea, the moment that ship crosses that dotted line in the middle of the ocean where it becomes PNG national territory, Starlink by legislation switches itself off and the boat no longer has connectivity. It still could communicate, but because under law the system is not allowed to operate in PNG waters, the Starlink network deliberately detects by GPS that the terminal has moved across the boundary and shuts itself off. The same boat navigates from Australia through the Indonesian Sunda Strait and then to Singapore. Indonesia doesn't have Starlink licensed to operate in its territory yet. Singapore does. So the moment that same ship travels out of Australian Indonesian waters, through international waters, crosses the dotted line into Indonesian territory in the middle of the ocean, the Starlink system turns off, they get through to the other side, out the dotted line into international waters, it turns back on again. They then have better connectivity than most people in the capital city in Australia. It runs at 300 megabits per second. It's just insane. And then runs all the way through to Singapore. And as they're docking in Singapore, it continues to operate because it's licensed to operate in Singapore. It's a licensing issue. It can be fixed. If you are in a country that does not have Starlink operating, you need to petition your government to allow Starlink to get a telecommunications provider license in your country so that they can operate. Or one of the other networks, the Microsoft network or the Amazon network, Project Kuiper, one of those, and as soon as one gets access, the rest will want access as well. But it's a government licensing issue, and that's how it gets fixed, by not changing the license regime, but encouraging your telecommunications department to allow the Starlink organisation to get a communications provider license in your country.
Thank you, Paul. Andrew.
Thank you. As Holly mentioned, my name's Andrew Williams. I'm the Chief Executive of the Australian Communications Consumer Action Network, and we're the peak body for communications consumers in Australia. And in a nutshell, we advocate for services that are trusted, inclusive, accessible and available to all Australians. As a side note, in a former life, I was actually I spent many years as a navigator in the Australian Navy, and during that I actually spent quite a bit of time. I've spent quite a bit of time in the Pacific. You've only got to sail a ship from Panama to Sydney to know how much water there is in that ocean. So I've been to a lot of the countries that we've been talking about, and for example, in the previous session we're talking about Niue, Tuvalu. So I've got a pretty good understanding of some of the geographic challenges that go on in the Pacific. But my focus today is really just to follow up probably on the last three lines of Holly's slide, and just give some insights from the Australian perspective. So starting with device availability, because that's a really big issue in Australia. Recently as about 2 months ago, we launched, or Australia launched the Australian Digital Inclusion Index for the updated one for 2023. I think it runs every 2 or 3 years. And it showed that if you're looking at those Australians who are highly digitally excluded, or even just digitally excluded, we're talking about nearly 25% of the population who really don't have adequate access to the internet, and also access to utilise the internet to its full capability. So, and devices are a big part of that, because even as I think one of the interesting points from the previous session was that's very similar in Australia, and in a lot of the Pacific countries, mobile devices are the predominant means of accessing the internet. And to have a fully digitally included economy, mobile devices don't provide the full utility that's needed. And that there's only limited capability. It's only generally suited for less complex, quite simple tasks and uses of the internet. Very difficult to work and study online on a mobile device, particularly a mobile phone, and that's something that's really been amplified in Australia over the last 2 to 3 years, obviously, as we've all gone to working, studying, and doing everything online during the pandemic. So that's a big thing. And positively, what we're starting to see is a lot more focus on repurposing devices in Australia. Second-hand devices, there's a lot of social purpose and not-for-profit organisations who are trying to focus on repurposing, ideally government devices, when government departments transition their IT, then rather than sending them to landfill or some other way, is just having some better coordination of how we can repurpose them and provide a more affordable option for low-income consumers, because we can really go into the affordability in great detail, but I think Paul's touched on that. And there's obviously environmental benefits to that as well. So the less we're putting into landfill, the more that we're assisting the environment. On a side note, we're also keeping a close eye on some of the legislation in Europe where they're standardising that USB-C is going to be the standard charging for all devices. So that is going to have a significant impact. Funnily enough, Apple don't see the funny side of that, but I think they'll survive. So that's a big one for us. The other really big one in Australia is digital skills and the ability to utilise the internet to its full capability, and that's an area that is ongoing. We've got a number of organisations working on digital skills particularly for the most vulnerable consumers, and that would include low-income consumers. Senior Australians are really an area where we've got a number of fairly significant programs to try and upskill senior Australians. And as Paul touched on earlier, we've got our remote Indigenous communities. There's probably about 70% of the Australian land mass is in remote areas, and there's a lot of our Indigenous communities that Dr. Daniel Featherston and his work has been focusing over the last few years, where digital skills and access to the internet and devices is prominent. So that's a big one for us, and there's quite a number of programs on that, because obviously the more Australians we get connected and being able to utilise it, the greater economic benefit. And we're also finding that there's a significant number of government and non-government services, as highlighted by Paul's cartoon, are being increasingly driven online. That in itself creates a whole raft of other challenges, because we do acknowledge that there will always be a reasonably significant cohort of Australians who don't want to be online and don't want to be connected. And again, with the previous panel, I think it was I was talking about the situation in Niue, for example. Having that paper-based system is to support those who do want to be online is absolutely important as well. So we have flagged that with government and industry, that while it's great that the majority of Australians do want to be connected and do want to access all of the relevant services, whether that's social security, whether that's employment opportunities or anything else, there will always be a significant element who don't or can't or won't want to be engaged in that manner. And the other really important one on that is it is very easy to overlook a significant cohort of people with disability, and that's something with the digital skills that's really important. At ACAN, for the last 3 or 4 years, or 5 years in fact, we've run a program initially supported by government, then supported by industry, and it's now back to being supported by government, to try and provide as much information on the appropriate devices and systems for people with a variety of disabilities. So if you just imagine, with your smartphone, if you are visually impaired, hearing impaired, or have some other cognitive issue that makes it difficult to utilise it, then what are the products out there that can actually be utilised for your specific situation? Funnily enough, there has actually been very, very little information on that until we started running our program, and it's very manual. There's no automated way for when a Telstra or an Optus upgrades their devices, or whether it's an Apple or a Samsung. There is no automated way to find out what new features are available for specific disabilities. So we have to work through that systematically and update quite manually. The other allied issue related to that is website accessibility as well. We run a grant program, and one of the grantees a few years ago did did a research project on all of the major telecommunications companies' websites, and found that the majority of them were very, very difficult to access and navigate for people with vision impairment. So there's web content accessibility guidelines. It's a UN standard, and we're advocating very strongly for all Australian organisations, not only just the telecommunications companies, but everybody in Australia should be adhering to those guidelines. And before I came to ACAN, I had no idea it existed, but now it's an integral part of what we do. Even our board papers, because I've got one director who's vision impaired and another one coming on who's hearing impaired. So just reviewing all of our internal systems and processes to make sure that we don't forget those that really important element of or cohort that has a disability. And finally, before I hand back to Holly, security and safety, it's no secret, but scams is just insidious. Doesn't matter whether you're in Australia, whether you're anywhere else. Scams, we've lost, I think that the latest data in Australia has been over $4 billion has been lost in scams over the last 12 to 18 months. And that number's not likely to go down in a hurry. Coordination across all the different bodies has been a real challenge in Australia, but finally, under our new government that's been in power now for about 18 months, we've finally got an overarching coordinating structure together called the National Anti-Scam Centre, and there's education is a key part of that. There's legislation, there's voluntary codes that the telecommunications companies have implemented that have been successful in blocking hundreds of millions of scam text and mobile phone calls and landline calls. But what we're finding is that that's now pushing a lot of these scams off to some of the other digital platforms, WhatsApp, Messenger, things like that. So having an education and a redress capability action plans across all of the different organisations, whether it's the competition and consumers, whether it's the telcos, the banks are a big part of that as well, because most of the harm comes when people transfer money, and then you've got the blockchain industry as well, because a lot of the scams we're finding are happening over cryptocurrency as well. So that's a real burgeoning issue in Australia, with the National Anti-Scam Centre has been up and running now for probably only about 6 months, but we are really confident that we'll start to see some greater coordination and really make it difficult for the scammers, because if we can disrupt their business model, then that will go a long way to addressing that. But I think it's relevant in this forum too, because we are finding that a lot of the harm and the hurt with scams is again in our most vulnerable cohorts, our Indigenous Australians, our low-income Australians, and probably our seniors as well. So I think that's got some relevance in this forum. In the interest of time, Holly, I think I'll shut up.
Thank you, Andrew. And for information about a lot of the stuff that ACAN does, it's acan.org.au. I won't give you Paul's address. Any final words before I take questions? Any further comments?
Yeah, I'll just mention one thing that I think is important from a telecommunications perspective, but it's not actually to do with communications. A lot of communications providers get a very bad rap because of concerns about reliability. Most of the reliability issues that we see are generally due to problems with the underlying electricity supply. We saw that in Australia with the severe bushfires a few years ago, where a lot of the inability to communicate, including amongst the emergency services crews themselves, were because the telecommunications infrastructure is inherently relying on the electricity network. Many of the mobile phone towers rely on generators. Generators run out of fuel, and in a bushfire and emergency scenario, you can't get the tankers in there to refuel the generators. They run for 2 or 3 hours after the mains power fails, and then they turn off as well. And what we found is the crews couldn't get in to replenish the generators. Much of the infrastructure didn't have generators. Something like Starlink as a portable system needs power to run. As soon as your phone runs out of batteries, if you haven't got any local electricity, you can't recharge your phone. You can't run your radio. The batteries run out in your transistor radio. If you've still got one of those, tuned to AM, all information stops. So a lot of the resilience and improvements for telecommunications availability and making it more reliable actually comes down to making the electricity more reliable. And I'm pretty sure that Australia isn't the only country where that's true. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Just going back to the theme is actually connectivity. And as the chart, which we've lost now, pointed out, there are many aspects to connectivity. It's not just actually the connection, it's all of the other stuff that gets between you and connecting. And that's what we try to address. And again, ACAN is part of that. And there are other information that you can access as well. But we've got a little bit of time left if anybody's got questions either for Andrew or for Paul about connectivity. And if not, okay. We've answered all your questions. No, we haven't.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the wonderful presentations. My question comes only on the affordability part, probably because of different markets. But I'm from, by the way, I'm Brian, and I'm from the Solomon Islands. And in 2019, we just have our first submarine cable that landed in 2019, but I think everyone's complaining that affordability has come down as promised. Would there be any reasons as to why from maybe in theory? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that. I'm familiar with the cable. That was a cable that was built, in fact, by the organisation that I'm currently working my day job with by Vocus. But yeah, that cable from Solomon Islands comes into Sydney. I suspect there's a number of the reasons for that prices haven't come down as they might have been promised, largely come down to a lack of competition. So there is one cable to Solomon Islands, so the operator of that cable can charge what they like. When you get 2 cables or 3 cables, or you get 2 cables and another method of communicating, such as a high-performing satellite, once you start getting some competitive tension, it's amazing how quickly those wholesale prices come down. But also in the Solomon Islands and your guidance, is there more than one telecommunications provider that you can go to get service? Is there competition amongst the infrastructure providers? Are there multiple organisations who are permitted to dig trenches and put fibre? Or is everybody buying their services, all the internet service providers buying their services wholesale from the same group, often a government-owned group in many of these nations? Different islands, nations have different degrees of competition and different degrees of deregulation in their systems. In Australia, all the telecommunication providers are all private organisations, some listed on a stock exchange. They're not government owned. In some other nations, the telecommunications provider is still the old model where it's a department of a government department. And When there's only one, there's no incentive to reduce prices because that goes straight to reducing their ability to pay generally far too many employees. That's what we saw in Australia with Telstra, Telecom Australia at the time. So I suspect it'll be related to that sort of area. The infrastructure's there, the communication's there, the bandwidth is there. It's a market structure issue that might be holding prices up higher than they might otherwise be.
Any other questions for Paul or Andrew?
Keeping on with the submarine cables, Jonathan Brewer from New Zealand. Aside from the case of the Solomons and the Coral Sea cable network, the rest of the Pacific Islands have cables that they've taken out loans to purchase. Now, they need to charge what they're charging on the cables to pay back their loans. The governments are heavily invested in these cables. They're the ones who owe the money. So they don't have any incentive to allow competition from satellite networks because that would reduce their ability to pay their loans. Any solutions here?
Australia had some of the very same issues, moving from one competitor to many competitors. And let's just say it was a bumpy road. We got there, but some of it wasn't very pretty.
Things are always muddy when it comes to money. Being an engineer is brilliant because you get to dig holes in the ground, throw some conduit, throw some fibre, provide some services, connect people that couldn't get a signal before, and do all sorts of wonderful things, provided the funding is there to buy it, and provided you've got some smart ways of sourcing the components so you're not being charged too much for it. Submarine cables are extremely expensive, as you well know. We're talking, around the Pacific Islands area, a typical submarine cable is in the area of, a short one, 80 million US, a long one, Australia to the US, you're talking 250, 300 million US dollars for a cable. Now, it lasts for 25 to 30 to 35 years. It has almost infinite bandwidth. And as long as you keep upgrading the equipment connected onto the ends of it, then you almost never fill it up. You generally find a cable retires because it's become obsolete based on another cable being run parallel to it than the cable itself stopping working. But if it's funded by debt and it's funded by loans, a lot of those loans are funded by the World Bank and or UN processes, intergovernmental processes. They're not necessarily done in the private market mostly. And when that happens, there are avenues, if someone petitions enough, for the debt to be forgiven and wiped off. That debt and financials and balance sheets and things are funny things where if you have the right accountant and the right financial machinations, you can make amazing things happen with the stroke of a pen. It's actually much easier to do that than to contract a cable laying ship and lay something along the bottom of the ocean for 6 to 12 months, particularly now when most of the cable ships are utilised in other projects. So the only solution I can see for that is to actually get the debt forgiven, or in some countries, it's an election process where the population speaks to the popularity of a government that doesn't allow competition, and the government finds itself getting voted out of office for things like not being able to provide communications infrastructure where the population thinks they need it, along with things like not providing banking infrastructure where the population thinks it, or basic healthcare. Telecommunications is as important, connection to the internet is as important as good health, clean running water, good education. And a government that can't provide comparably low costs in all of those things compared to comparable nations is likely to find itself on the wrong end of the population's ire, and the more that happens, the better.
I'm not sure that answered your question. Is it something you would like to talk about offline? But it's a very real issue.
Thank you. The answer of debt forgiveness is probably the best answer.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? If not, I'd like to say thank you to Andrew and thank you to Paul. And I'm sure both of them will be available maybe over coffee for 10 minutes. But thank you all.
Hello, it's me again. Please do remember to put all of the highlight discussions and topics from this session into our platform comment.aprigf.asia. Up next in the same room after the tea break, you can go and grab some coffee and some tea. It'll start at 11:30. It is Connecting Communities, Community Radio for Connectivity, Inclusion, Digital Rights, and Freedom of Expression. So please get some refreshments and come back into the room starting at 11:30. Thank you.
Recording stopped.
Sorry.
Mic drop moment. Yes.
Take some pictures of the panel and I'll keep it. Like if you want it right away, I can send it to you.
Yeah, that'd be great. If you said Holly can forward it through to us. There you go. That'd be great.
So I can send it to you now.
Or can you send one to me?
Yes.
My media guy on my back. Oh, excellent. Yeah. Email's perfect.
I don't have a media guy, but I'll if you can send it through, that'd be great.
Are we back on stage?
No, she said she did take some while we were talking.
Oh, good. Perfect.
Yes, they're all taken already.
Perfect.
AV team, can the Zoom room hear me right now? Okay, perfect. For the next session, I just want to make sure everybody is in that needs to be in. So let me just double check. Oh, this is Jen from the Secretariat, by the way. Do we have, I see that we have Babu Ram and we have Jane Coffin. Do we have Ritu? Let's see, Ritu. Yes, we do have Ritu. Do we have Omar? We do not have Omar. Are we waiting for Omar? Can someone either unmute or tell me in chat?
He is joining in a bit.
Got it. And then I also have Sarbani and Mode listed as online speakers. Is that correct?
Yes, I'm there here.
Oh, they are here. Okay, perfect. So we have all speakers except for Omar. Is that correct?
No, so there's a Mohammed Niaz as well. He's also joining in a bit.
Okay,
Not-
Mohammed. Okay, I see. All right. I'm not going to let in the guests just yet. Let me make sure that we have everyone that needs to be in. I will help you moderate and be your eyes in the room. And once there's any Q&A, I will run the mic as well for you. All right. Do we have any remote presenters who have presentation slides?
No, I don't think that we will be having a free flow of a discussion.
So just a discussion. So just to confirm, we will just show the title slide, which is the name of the session in the room, and we will open and pin any remote speakers if you want to turn on your webcam during the session. And we have no slides, so I will let you run and moderate the session, and if you want me to open up the Q&A on the ground, I can do so. All right.
So while we are waiting, we can join, we can initiate the discussion.
Ritu, can you repeat, please?
While we are waiting for the two people to join, can we start the session?
Yes, we can start the session on time as you wish. Just double checking. Pio, can you start the recording, please?
Recording in progress.
Ritu, will you be the first presenter and speaker? We can pin you.
I will be moderating the session and and then of course there will be the session panelists are there already. Jane Coffin and Sarbani is there. In a bit, Babura Marial is also there, and in a bit, Niaz is also joining, and Umar is also joining it. Okay. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone, those who have come for this session. It's a very early morning in India, and it's very early. It's a sunny morning in everywhere else as maybe as well as. Thank you, everyone, for joining. The session is as we all know, the session topic is about community radio and how the community radio and networks are being placed, and how community radios are bringing the connectivity, inclusion, and digital rights and freedom of expression. It's been privileged that those who have joined to understand that how community radio stations have been exercising the rights of a freedom of expression and digital rights, not from one decade, but also from the last 2 decades or more than those ones. Having said that point, it's been that community radio stations in India specifically, but also in South Asian countries as well as elsewhere across the globe, they have played a very major role during the time of pandemic, while providing the access to information, social and economic justice rights, and bringing the voices of a lower and marginalized communities for what they have been gone through during the time of a pandemic. They have been the voices and the medium and the tools for it. However, one of the challenges that what we have also seen in community radio stations, that connectivity is one of the challenges that is as it is evident that connectivity and access to internet is becoming more and more important in the lives of us. It also becomes important for the people, those who do not have that internet connectivity. And that's where this session comes about, that how it can be promised and how it can be done, that where community radio stations and community networks can join hand to hand together for those kind of roles, and they can bring in the more social and economic justice rights. That's the context of this session, but yet the challenges still lies there in a very number of questions which still pending, that why this session is all, what exactly we should do to bring the more existing, how to utilize existing infrastructure. I would like to introduce my session speakers, Jane Coffin, who she brings a lot of extensive experience in connectivity area. She has worked with several international organizations and the organizations, those who have been funding for community networks or a connectivity or a rural broadband organizations, those who are working in a space of a rural broadband. She has worked with ISOC, Connect Humanity, and many other renowned organizations. I would like to call Jane, that she can introduce herself a little bit more, and just to tell that why why decentralization of a network is so important through CR stations, and going forward, why this is required, that CR stations and community networks needs to marry themselves to amplify the diverse voices and perspectives. Jane, over to you.
Thank you very much, Ritu. And hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to join you there at the APrIGF. Very exciting. As Ritu said, I've worked for various organizations, some of them governmental, some private sector, quite a few nonprofit, and with a focus always on connectivity and internet infrastructure, policies and regulation to help with that internet infrastructure and to improve governance of that infrastructure and to keep it independent and bottom up, hopefully, as much as you can. Most recently, I was working with the Internet Society for 10 years and then a group called Connect Humanity, and that was to help promote internet infrastructure, internet governance, as I said before, and some other related issues, and also financing of all of those networks, so they're more independent. As Ritu had just indicated, the decentralization of networks is part of the premise that goes way back with the interwebs. Paul Barron is often, and others are given a lot of credit for that, but it came about through the academic communities as well. And it became, quite frankly, something that people saw as a strategic and security related issue as well with respect to decentralization. You don't want single points of failure. You certainly don't want one hub and spoke network. That doesn't work. That's why we all know the internet network of networks is has been so successful. And it's also a way to keep growing a more sort of neural-like network, because they're organic in many areas and some are, of course, well planned. But it means, again, that there aren't single points of failure, that you don't have one place where people can take out your network would be a bad thing. It also means there's more resiliency and redundancy in that network of networks. And with not only community networks, but community radio, you certainly can have a more both resilient and redundant infrastructure, but one that is more decentralized and reflects the communities that they're from. and also is reflective of different practices that you might want to employ from a technological perspective. Not all these networks are going to be the same. I think we all know that. And community radio often is shortwave, which is, and the ham operators, they may otherwise be known. There's a group called the International Radio Relay League. I'm trying to remember. They're an observer to the World Radio Conferences. So they're one of the only organizations of that nature that is an observer and actually sits in those meetings in wherever they may be with the ITU for the World Radio Conferences. So it's important to note that shortwave is extremely well respected, along with, of course, other technologies and use of spectrum, but it's something that's incredibly well respected at the table when it comes to spectrum allocation and assignments. But decentralization and community radio, I think, is just obvious. You're coming from the community out. You're obviously trying to figure out how to backhaul and or work with other networks that can receive your signals and or other users out there. So they're often used in times of disaster assistance as well, when there are natural disasters or man-made. You'll often find that during the pandemic, of course, too, which woke a lot of people up to why connectivity isn't a vertical enabler, it's a horizontal enabler across many different practices and sectors. And when I say practice and sectors, I mean everything from education to business to social to other. And Ritu, your other point about why this marriage of community radio and community networks is required to amplify diverse voices and perspectives. I think for every community network that we know of, every community radio station, every community in and of itself is extremely different, diverse. There are certain sort of technical practices that you might use that are the same, but every network is going to be a little bit different. And so that does also help with that diffusion and different characterization of those networks themselves from a diverse perspective and voices. And if the technology is there and people can use it, then it can be taken up across the world. And this is one of the most important things I think about making technology easy to understand and or showing people that they can put a community radio network together and they can put a community network together. This is why so many organizations that I've worked with and others out there are keen to make sure they have case studies or that they're doing capacity building exercises with communities, listening to those communities and hearing how those communities want to put their networks together and or what they want to do with them. I think Shobani may mention later different aspects and characterizations of networks she's worked with. So I won't go into how diverse they can be, but I think it's very important to recognize that we have to make it easier for people to understand why community networks and community radio could offer them both redundancy, resiliency, diversification, and the ability to have different voices. I'll stop there, Ritu.
Thank you so much, Jane. And that's a very important point that you have mentioned, that every community network or a radio has a different perspective, there are different models. I will come to you again when we will be talking about more technical details about it and come back to you. Thank you so much. I'll bring the Babu Ram Aryal for bringing the voices at how radio stations in Nepal are exercising the rights of freedom of expression, what kind of a thing they are doing. It's been prevalent that Nepal is one of the countries where they have a largest number of community radio stations. And it's also the thing that one of the Nepal also has one of the pioneers in a community network. What exactly they have done as well in bringing the freedom of expression together along with the community radio and the community network together. Babu Ram Aryal is let me just introduce also him, that Babu Ram Aryal is a founder and CEO of a Delta law firm in Kathmandu. He has over 2 decades of experience in the telecommunication sector and in media, technology and intellectual properties and foreign investments. He is also a vice chair for the multi-stakeholder steering committee of Asia Pacific Regional IGF and Nepal IGF. He's also a member of ICANN and iSociety Next Generation and a CPR's Young Fellow. So let me call Babu Ram for sharing his experiences from the Nepal and how the Nepal is been exercising these two things together. Babu?
Thank you, Rita. It's my pleasure to be in APrIGF, this very significant session. I was past vice chair of APrIGF. Now I'm one of vice chair of Asia Pacific School on Internet Governance. And it's been long that I've been engaged in community communications and media practice previously, and practicing lawyer in Nepal, especially in communication sector. As Ritu rightly said, in Nepal we have more than 350 community radio stations contributing significantly on freedom of expression and right to information. And Radio Sagarmatha is the oldest community radio station in South Asia, if I'm not wrong. And these radio stations have been contributing significantly in democratic process and democratization of the society in Nepal. Especially a bit different character from Nepalese context in community radio. Community radio, basically, they don't focus on news, and they are in some part of countries like in South Asia, they don't allow to disseminate news bulletins through FM radio stations, community radio stations. But in Nepal, from very beginning, news were very significant content for community radios, and there was a Supreme Court case when previous regressive regime stopped disseminating news bulletins through community radio or FM stations, especially saying FM stations are only for local issues, and news are not the content of FM stations. So Supreme Court upheld the practice and said that any restriction on news dissemination to any community radios, FM stations are violation of fundamental rights of freedom of expression that was guaranteed by the Constitution of Nepal. So from that perspective, community radio stations from Nepal have significant milestone on disseminating news, bringing local news to national and international. Now, why I'm saying national and international? From on air now, we have entered into online and now hybrid model of community radio broadcasting has started vis-a-vis through frequencies of radios and frequency of internet, I mean digital platforms. So this is the a brief background of community radio stations in Nepal, how they have been focusing on and contributing on freedom of expression in Nepal. An important part of community radio that we experience in Nepal is promoting local content, local issues. You know, as I referred that we have more than 350 radio stations, community radio stations, and we have a similar number of other private run FM stations. Again, they are contributing at local levels. So they have contributed significantly, bringing local issues into the mainstream, bringing local enterprise, local community issues, local culture into the communication platforms. And when this internet significantly came into the existence and contributing to all the sectors, now there are certain issues that community radio stations are facing. Previously, community radios or FMs were considered primary channel for information. Now because of the internet platforms, social media platforms, people are slowly deviating from community radio stations to internet contents. So in this context, there are two major issues faced by community radios. One is now audience are diverse, and how to make this community radio contribution to more interactive with the audience. And another is now it has become significant challenge from infrastructure perspective. Though internet is expanded largely, but still Nepal has, because of its geographical terrain, it has very complex internet facilities. Jin, obviously she knows certain aspect of internet issues in Nepal. And to refer in this, still radio stations or people are facing broadband connectivity as one of major challenge. So while bringing from on air to online, it's very significant challenge for community radio stations to resource or get the connectivity. I mean, meaningful connectivity. When we see the reports of regulators, Nepal Telecommunication Authority, we have now more than 80-90% accessibility is there, but these accessibility are from various levels, but not as per the meaningful accessibility. So these are the some of issues on connectivity. And another issue that now, when moving from on air to moving to online and going on a hybrid model, there are some legal issues previously not related with FM stations. Now, when they moved into online platform as well, now various legal issues like defamation and other kind of issues are now as part of discussions. Content regulation, takedown issues, challenging from political spheres, challenging from other bad actors of societies are also significant. The challenge of safety of journalists when bringing a small town issue to larger community through online. Now it has become another level of challenge when these connectivity are brought into the play of community radio stations. These are some of things that I wanted to share at the beginning. When the discussion goes, I'll share more thoughts on the process. Ritu, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Babu. And it's a really, it's the one of the major points that you have mentioned, that connectivity may have can stations and that connectivity, when it is combined, it provides a meaningful connectivity. But also there are some other issues which are turning up, like content regulations and the safety of journalists, specifically from the perspective of the local journalists, those who are bringing the voices of the very local and the marginalized communities. So that's a very prevalent, that's a very important point when we talk about the exercising the rights and exercising the freedom of expression itself. I would like to bring into this discussion Sarbani, who has around more than 10 years of an experience in working in the space of a community networks, and she has recently drafted a chapter for a women and how community radio stations, women are exercising their freedom of expression through the community radio stations. She has over more than a decade of an experience while working in a community networks, and she is working with, she was working as an Asia Pacific regional head at Association for Progressive Communication. Prior to that, she was working with a Gram Mark and bringing the rural connectivity in one of the rural regions of Maharashtra. in India. So I'll bring to the Sarbani, and having said that, the point that one of the major concerns that is still, which we have it, when we have a community radio station and when we have a community as well as a connectivity as a marriage, how women feel and how women feel that how women are expressing their express themselves through these localized community radio stations. And when marriages combine it with the connectivity and a CR station, what are the privacy concerns that it matters for a women to express themselves online? Whether CR stations help them, or what strategies they do bring when the connectivity is provided by locally by a known people, and still it is a concern for women. Those are the Sarbani, would you like to introduce yourself a little bit further and also answer these questions as well from the perspective of a women and expressing themselves?
Thank you, Ritu, for inviting me to be in this session. Hello, everyone. I am Shabani Belu, and I am the Asia Regional Coordinator for the LockNet project at APC. And this year, I'm also the fellow at ICEA. ICEA is an organization. It's called Institute for Social Entrepreneurships in Asia, which is based out of Philippines. And I'm happy to be a part of this session today to discuss about the role of women in the community network, in the community radio space. So my points are that very recently we worked on this aspect of how women get involved in the community radio stations, and how community radios provide a sort of a platform for women to express themselves. And in this context, we did a study with 8 women in remote community radio stations. And in these locations, there has been no connectivity. So we tried to look at how these women are working in these in the community radio stations and enabling information dissemination to happen within the community. So one of the things that we observed is that as there is no connectivity in these locations, so the utilization of the smartphone by women, radio jockeys, the 8 radio jockeys whom we interviewed, it was very surprising to see that they use the smartphone not in the location where in the village or the community radio station, because there is no connectivity over there. So they use the smartphone as a means for gathering more information, and they visit locations in and around the village where the mobile signals trickle in. So it is actually, it could be on a hilltop or on a location where there are no trees and it's an empty space where they can sit and they get information, they gather information. But before this process, they are actually working on focusing on understanding that where is this information, what is this information that they need to provide to the society, to the community. And in most of the cases, this is something, information gathering that happens from the women themselves. It's an initiative by the women. So they are ideally not having any income from being a radio jockey in these community radio stations. But overall, they use the community radio stations for expressing themselves. And the reason they told is that they are not judged by anyone. So usually women are judged by people. So when they are in a room which is in an enclosed room, their voice is sort of speak for themselves, and people in their community recognize themselves by their voice, by the voice of these women radio jockeys. So that's the type of empowerment that women feel that they are sort of empowered through this radio station. The understanding that this is one of the aspects that they discussed about. In most of the cases, the mobile phone as a small technology, as a technology that it's often connected to internet, right? But in these locations where there is no internet connectivity, they use the mobile phone only for audio recording or clicking photographs. So if there is a public a forum that is organized within the community for discussions, they use the mobile phone only for recording these and bringing it back to the radio station and doing the editing. Um, uh, the I think the community radio stations play a very big role in empowering women in the communities. And they have a very important, the women play a very important role, because otherwise the women feel that there is no other way by which they can contribute to the community benefit and enhancement. There is a very important aspect of women of community radios being converted into community networks, because community radio stations have all the enabling factors in seeding a community network to grow. And perhaps this discussion will come up in the due course of time by the different panelists, and I will keep it for the later. Yeah, so that's from me. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sarvani, and thank you for so much, like bringing the small nuances that how being a radio jockey itself is a way of expressing for women for expressing themselves. Now, I would like to bring Mr. Mohammad Niaz, who has been a practitioner and who has a community radio station in Odisha, rural district of in a Bhadrak district, rural part of a country of in India, where he has established his radio station, community radio 17. One of the he has been he has been practicing the community radio media practices from the more than a decade, but also while working in a rural side of the country, how does a radio station is being exercised by local people for exercising their freedom of expression, not only, but also the what makes unique being a radio station in a community in a rural community itself. That's where the perspective of a Niaz will be able to bring it. Niaz, I would like to ask you that what makes unique for a CR stations to bring being in a rural side brings the freedom of expression, or what exactly that the help that they do for a committee for exercising their rights, how they play that role. So one of the things that which we'd like to know, and when internet is becoming so evident, where does the community radio stand in that discussion? Does community radio still need a connectivity, or it can work in a different models as well?
So good morning, everyone, and good afternoon to everyone also. So right now, I'm so thankful to Ritu that we got the chance to speak on IGF, and what my colleague other like Baburam and other were told, that we are lucky to have in India that lot of community radio is now working in rural area. They're doing very good work. The Ritu mentioned here about the connectivity. So I'll mention here how we during the COVID, due to internet, we are also broadcasting, and as well as we are in the social media due to digitalization. And we play a lot of role during the COVID when somebody staying in Mumbai or in Delhi or in Bangalore, which is from our place, it took around 1700 kilometers, it means 1000 miles, you can say. So we played role during the COVID. We play the means helpline. We had opened the things so that the people from the village here, where our radio is running, we have the some numbers you can see in our Facebook page also. On during 2021 we have done. Apart from that, yes, we need most of the radio to be connected with well. Like we are doing one things here in CR Bolo, we are doing community radio. The Bolo means they speak. We are having one Wi-Fi connection where our radio connects north and south of our area, which is around 3 miles or 3.5 miles, where the people staying, they can upload their photos, they can upload the content 1.2 minutes and maximum 3 minutes, and the video they can also upload for 3 minutes, which we played in India. We have started, this is the unique thing where our community radio can connect the society, where we have connected means our radio station in a different places. Like we have connected to one schools and another one society, where they can upload their content. We can see here by sitting in our radio station. Right now I'm sitting in our radio station. So this is the kind we have started the initiatives, as well as we are in Play Store, we are in social media, all the social media using the platform. So here, those who means here right now in live, those who are sitting, those who are listening. So I request everybody, those who thinks that the community, the digital, I'm not talking about the social media, but still the role of community radio play very vital in the rural pocket of entire world. What Baburam Bhai told in Nepal, they are also playing very means crucial things in the Nepal during disaster, natural disaster. Same year in India also, we play, it may be, you know, when we talk about the freedom of expression, we are doing the social harmony. When we talk about the rights of the women, when we talk about the to stop the illegal child marriage. So a lot of the campaign we do, not only through the broadcasting. Now the good things we have started here, that we also do the narrowcasting. We go to the places, we target the community people where there is a need. So we do and do, we go and do the narrowcasting over there. So one of the, when we talk about the connectivity community today, the subject is that the digital rights. As I worked from last, with Ritu from last 2010, digital, about the digitalization. Yes, I believe that everybody have the rights to get the internet, whoever it may be. The every single people have, they have the rights to take the how internet can reach, and in how internet can give their rights. Through internet they can get lot of information. Like we have the schemes in Manrega, means the government scheme where they can get involved and they can work. We had done a lot of campaign in our panchayat level with the help of one of our colleague, Radio Namaskar, who had got the project from the UNICEF, through UNICEF, where we have done the promotion of how the people, village people can get the their rights, their information, their government schemes. So we aware the people through community radio. We do believe that the internet is necessary, but to reach the people, we have to give the awareness through community radio. So thank you, Ritu. If you need, we can discuss more. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, Niaz. And but I still will be with you right now and asking you that what are the challenges still in a radio station face during the time of, even if there's internet or there's no internet, and later on I would like to go to the Jane as well, that what makes CR station unique, that this marriage could happen, and this like a CR station can play a vital role in providing the last mile connectivity. But firstly, let me ask you, from what are the still challenges that CR station is facing, despite the fact that while working in this kind of a situation, when you do have an internet, but you can not exercise those rights, is from a smaller rights as well.
Yeah, it's true that because a lot of village people, they still they don't have the means Android phone, you can say, number one. Number two, internet. When we talk about our community radio station, internet is price is high to manage this entire things. We need the broadband and some kind of things kind of, so it's costly for the community to manage this one. So this is major challenge. And number two, to aware the people how to use. So we have to give training to the rural people.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Jane, I would like to bring to you in this conversation. Why do you think that CR station can play a vital role in exercise, in not only bringing the connectivity, but also to bring the meaningful connectivity when we say it? And this is a common question for all of us, like when Sarbani was talking about women perspective and Baburam is saying about the disaster or something else, why it is important for a CR station to be that play that role.
From the meaningful connectivity perspective, and this is Jane's definition of meaningful, because I'm not going to get into the technical aspects of what that some organizations have put forward with respect to meaningful connectivity, but I would think that any community created content and any community based infrastructure is going to be some of the most meaningful because it's about that community, it's coming from that community, and it's what that community needs. But to your point, Ritu, about the big meta, in the meta sense of what meaningful is, I won't get into quality of service though. I think it really just depends on what people are hungry to have, what type of content they want. I'm from a very rural area in the United States. I'm not in a rural area right now, but radio was something that we relied on. It wasn't community radio, but it was very much friends of ours were part of a community radio station. And everyone really relied on that content. It kept the community together and it brought them different information that they didn't have in some of their daily lives. I think you were looking for some best practices. It certainly is. You've got to listen and work with your community. You can't assume that what you like is everything is something that everyone will like. It's almost like a birds of a feather group at the IETF or IGF or anywhere where you're trying to figure out what's most useful and helpful to those communities and I suppose meaningful in that context. I'll stop there because I'm sure there's some other great things that others will say, but I would just highlight that community radio can be a lifeline, of course, for many in remote communities and give them lots of information they may not be able to get if they don't have internet connectivity right away or a community network.
Yeah, thank you. I think Pradeep has one question and which I'd like to ask openly that, is this a licensing processes of a community radio station in India? Is relatively straightforward, but does this remain a relatively easy process or it has become a politicized or if it has, what are the consequences? Niyaz, this question I would like to ask from you. Radio stations have a straightforward licensing processes, but is it always easy as well that it becomes a more politicized, or what are the consequences that radio stations in India face as well?
No, I just saw the Pradeep Thomas. No, now it's very easy process. Now everything is online. Now earlier it took around 3 to 4 years, but now it's very easy to get within 6 to maximum by within 1 year. All things are online, so one can go easily. They can apply online. There will be no hard copy, so it's easy now. That's why we reaches now 370 plus community radio. It's very easy process now, and government is also trying their best to to get more community radio in our country. Every corner of the north, south, east, they do quarterly basis the program so that people should aware and they can apply for the community radio. Now it's easy, Pradeep.
Does it become a politicized as well? Whether political scenarios are or consequences are there? That's the question I think Pradeep also has asked.
No political ads. No, nothing like that. So nothing like that.
Thank Pradeep, I hope this question has been answered by and any other, if you still then you can please mention it as well. Those who are participating online, please feel free to put your questions. But I will come back to Sarbani that what are the factors, as Jane has mentioned that, and that Niaz, both everyone is talking about, what are the factors that it enables CR stations to provide the connectivity? What exactly is the unique thing that CR stations bring? Is it a infrastructure, or is it a human resource, and or is it a local content model? So is that so important for any network as well, Sarbani? So what kind of a uniqueness would you like to say that?
Yeah, so I think the most important thing is that the human resource. Community networks or complementary connectivity initiatives, yeah, are initiatives that have we need to have the community backing, right? And it has to be a network for the people, by the people. So it has to be them. Community radios, radio stations have that first level of interaction with the community, the human resources within the community that is there, identifying, that who is a person who can maintain the network, because maintaining the network is a very big issue, right? We try to find a person who has to maintain the network, the person who is passionate about that entire network. So the community radio station enables or helps us in having a better understanding of the human resource that is available within the community. And then the community network is just setting up the infrastructure within the within that context of the community. And and then we also work on partnerships that can be enabled, it can be a public-private partnership, or a partnership with the local government, the village government. But I think the most important thing that is there is the human resource that the community radio stations enable. That can make the transition from the community radio stations to a community network much easier. Apart from it, I think the infrastructure availability that is already there, like a tower that is already there for the radio station, and depending on the type of network that will be enabled, that we will be putting up within the community, it is dependent on that, and you can put up some extra infrastructure. But the radio waves, of course, we cannot use, because we don't, for internet connectivity, we don't use the radio waves. It is a different, the other waves, the microwaves is used. So we don't use that, but at least the human resource, I feel the human resource is the most important aspect. Yeah. Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks, Arbani. And I would like to open up this floor for the online questions and the questions, if anyone has it.
In the room, I will be running the queue and the mic, so if there's any participants who would like to ask a question, please raise your hand, I'll give you the mic.
Hello, everyone. My name is Isan. Maybe I will tell about my story. There are some application that that we make is the name is application of podcast for a rural area. There are application that giving podcast and radio and internet infrastructure, and we make it for a rural area, so the people there can keep a connect and have a good information for us in the city. And there's some challenge about that. Even in the rural area, internet is come there, and then they see something like YouTube and another option of social media things that give image or video things. So they have a track for image and video more than the sound that we produce on podcast or a radio. And yeah, we try to giving some gamification or something like that, but that's still difficult because the people have much more fun maybe on social media or YouTube that gives them some video or some fun. Is there any solution or maybe some sharing about this story too? How can we make the radio or a podcast sound a podcast is more interesting for them, I guess. Yeah, that is my question. Thank you.
Ritu, if you would like to answer.
I think that's a very prevalent, right question for a Niaz as well to answer, that how interesting CR stations can make it like for a podcasting to be like this way. Niaz, would you like to answer this question?
Yeah, my friend, what he asked, yes, lot of radio now they are in social media, they're making the video. You can see our page in Radio Available Facebook page. You will get it a lot of Instagram also. With that's through that also a lot of people from one province to other they connected. Those who are belongs to our place, they connected either they from anywhere, any part of world, they can connect us. So it's true now. A lot of radio they are in social media as well as what radio is broadcasting. We are in also in social media, and no doubt we do lot of short clips through video and sound. We do the clips for the awareness kind of thing. It may either when it was in during the COVID also we have done a lot of small videos during the COVID. So you can see that one. Yes, a lot of other radio that can't walk what Savani was telling about the human resource. But yes, a lot of people now they are connected through social media.
Is this, does it answer your question, or should we bring this more perspective on it? And I can see Carlos is also sitting over there and waving the hands as well. Say hi to Carlos as well. But yes, we talk.
I can comment.
Thank you. I don't know how you saw me waving my hand, but it's fine. Super nice session. Thank you very much for putting it together. A topic that we've been, wanting to know more, because indeed many networks are learning from what the analog networks that the radios put together, no, and the reach on sharing those informations, those local informations with the communities from earlier. I would be curious to know a bit more about the sustainability and the business models, maybe from the participant, from Radio Bulbul, or anything that you or Sarvani or Jane can say around how the transition from analog radio in the community radios to the online mode, has affected. On the one hand, you have, broader reach through the internet, but on the other hand, maybe there is not that much consumption or that much interest from potential local advertisers and the like. So wondering how that has evolved, and whether any consideration of extending with other type of internet connectivity could contribute to the sustainability of the community radio altogether. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Carlos, and bringing the very important point of a sustainability and talking about that how community radio stations or any network as well, bringing the sustainability model. This is an open question, and I would like ask Jane and Sarbani and Babu Ram and everyone to answer it as well, taking a bit of a moment for answering this question, and maybe later on combining these thoughts from my perspective as well. Jane and Sarbani or Babu, anyone want to volunteer for this question?
I'm happy to let Sarbani and Babu go first.
Yeah, thanks, Jane. It's very challenging. Recently, there was one South Asia Community Radios conference in Kathmandu. I was one of panelists, and we discussed about the various issues, including sustainability as well. So sustainability has become one of major challenge, and now we are discussing about whether the relevancy of FM radio stations are still there or not, whether community radio stations are replaced by the internet broadcasting or not. This is one of major issue to be discussed these days when we talk from sustainability perspective. And lots of community radios now, they have moved their content from traditional FM to online content as well, and some of these very interesting content have generated revenue for them as well. And when the small entrepreneurs, they used to give advertisement to local FM stations, community radio stations, when these contents are available over the online, and then their business are expanded, and now they are happy to have simultaneously on both platforms, FM and the local online, their online platform as well. So this is a bonus for the advertisers. An important part is in Nepal, as when we developed our political system from unitary to federal, and now we have many local level governments. They are significant on their autonomous exercise on economies. And now various local governments are tying up with local community radio stations for their affairs, and this is another opportunity to bring relationship and making sustainable radio stations. One significant aspect I wanted to highlight, the relevancy of community radio stations or FM radio stations, especially during the disaster. I recall 2015's disaster in Nepal, the big earthquake, and all the radio stations and as well as internet service providers were down that time. And with the support of Internet Society headquarters, we were able to restore the operation of community radio stations. We provided local portable power supply, power generators. Because of that, radio stations were up, and the people who were on the ground, who were homeless, they received regular updates from FM, even though they had no any other mobile or other telephone connectivity. So still the relevancy of radio stations or radio communications are very significant when disaster is there. And other platform will definitely, at least I see for a few years or decades, will not be replacing the relevancy of community radio stations in this. So when we were designing certain policies, when I was contributing to certain policies on disaster and communications, and I highlighted the importance of these radio stations contributions during disaster. So while discussing from sustainability, we need to bring all these aspects, not only sharing the regular content process, rather engaging in various context like a disaster, and then coordinating with local governments or local other community organizations could be significant when we talk about the sustainability. Though there are other business models as well, but still if we focus on these kind of issues and making own relevancy more to the community, could be better approach for sustainability. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Babu. I think that's an open question still. Anyone would like to answer else as well?
Ritu, we have a person who would like to answer in the room.
Sure.
Hello, my name is Ritu and I'm a council member of Internet New Zealand. I'm also a board member of in New Zealand of a thing that we call Māori Television, and that is funded by the New Zealand government as part of a treaty claim for our Māori language. In addition to that, that was started in 2006, and we also have a treaty claim for our language that has funded a network of community radio stations for the last 35 years. So in New Zealand, we have 21 community radio stations that are specifically targeted towards the revitalisation and the saving of our language and cultural customs. And I'm sorry I missed the start of your session, but my question is really, we are finding in New Zealand that the old analogue things that our community stations are confined to, that is looked upon as the poor cousin within New Zealand, in COVID actually served our very hard to reach Māori communities. And the research that is just being made now found that our Māori communities used our community radio stations, and they were nominated and also supported as the #1 trusted source of information for our communities. So I guess what I'm really asking you and what I'm hearing is that the case among all the community radio stations that you represent? Because it is certainly the case for Māori communities, and our government is wanting us to go digitally, but they can't afford to pay for it. But our communities are finding ways to use the old analogue technology to provide information about a range of things that are assisting the health and education of Māori people.
Back to you, Ritu.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for this wonderful story about the New Zealand and how New Zealand has been working in this radio, kind of a radio station. One of the things that I would still want to have from a Jane perspective, what is your perspective on this question as well? What she has asked.
Oh, it's an amazing question, and that was really great to hear about. From a financing perspective, if you're switching from analog to digital, it's a really good question. If the government can't fund all of it, there's a new way of looking at financing. It's not new, I should say. Carlos will laugh at me because we worked on this report together. I popped the link in the chat. Blended finance is a very fancy word, and I find it silly on occasion, but if you take different pots of money from different types of actors and investors, different capital, that's called blended finance. And for years, the investment community has used that in emerging markets. I think it's basically a way of saying we need to figure out a way to de-risk our investments, and we need to diversify as many different funding streams in this capital stack. Think of money stacked up from different players with different terms and ways of returning that money. Bottom line is that you can bring different groups of people together to help you, whether it's philanthropy, public-private, whether it's government and banks. There are a lot of banks who are very interested in helping local communities because they know those communities. And so back to the fancy word of blended finance and the capital stacks, it's basically finding different investors who will work with you and someone smart, like a guy named Brian VO, who works for Connect Humanity, a place I worked before. Brian knows communities. He knows how to listen and think about very clever ways to work with different people who will help capitalize what you need over a certain period of time so that it doesn't harm your community as far as if you're going to pay it back or if you're just looking for philanthropic funds to give you subsidies. There are subsidies in every country, maybe not in New Zealand, but I can tell you for sure all across the planet right now, we're seeing subsidization of infrastructure because it's so hard to get some of that startup funding. The other thing that Ritu and I were talking about earlier today was time. A lot of people who are traditional investors and other types of things don't understand time well when it comes to building networks. And what I mean by that is it can take a long time to build a network, to have a negotiation about land rights, which you would obviously know way more about than we do. But some of the folks that I worked with last year, for example, it takes 8 to 9 months just to negotiate something called pole rates, AKA where your wires can go on a pole, literally a telephone pole, where you can, in certain tribal communities in the United States and other places that I know about, it's certainly very time consuming because you must observe some of the tribal traditions, and you've got to make sure that you're not siting towers in places just because you think it's a good place to site the tower. You've got to work with those local communities. But on the financing and sustainability side, again, you've got to think about how long it's going to take to do what you need to do from the construction perspective, negotiation perspective, and financing. There's an art to it, and quite a few people out there now are looking at how do we make this a lot simpler. The report that I put the link to can help with that. There are different business models to look at. Sorry for taking so much time there.
Thank you so much. And I think time is running out, but I would like to still bring into some of the perspective from India, that India also has a very diverse region of funding and getting the finances. It's very complicated, but it is also very, also very mind-boggling that you need to understand how you need to path your ways to get the sustainability. Different districts or a very small level of our local panchayats or a village councils, they do have a funding, but they are not sure that this funding will go in which sector, whether they can fund the community radio or the connectivity. So that's the where the connection comes also, that what are the funding resources which are available locally and how you can channelize them for the connectivity and for the other kind of a combination of rights, when we talk about the rights and the combination of connectivity as well. So especially from an India perspective, we have seen a different funds are available, and those funds are unused because of they are not sure how they will be utilized and how they can be utilized in that way. So there's a really requirement from a local level as well as from a policy level point of view to channelize this funding and resources and how these funding resources can be utilized. There's a largely need of to understand these jargons and understand these high terms on the fundraising and sustainability portion for these localized community networks, either or for these community radio stations as well, that how we can simplify them. That's something which is I would like to close up with this session as well, but I would want that each panelist should give a last thought process on what exactly is the thought process that they would like to close this session as well, or one recommendation point as well.
So I'll just add here, Ritu. What we are thinking that about the sustainability, I think radio is the platform we can have the one-stop shop here. We have everything. So those who are running the community radio, we can make it in one-stop shop like things. Like we can give the facility to through internet, they can come, they can do lot of works, and we have lot of community people involved with the community radio. So we can do the larger perspective of the anything we can do. So it's one thing I can say here, as a community radio, what I feel, we have all the infrastructure. We can make the one roof soft kind of things in community radio. It can be happen.
Babu and Sarvani, if you would like to give us some closing thoughts, because we are running out of the time as well.
Thank you, Ritu. Yes, we are running out of time. Just wanted to say, let's make our relevancy through the content, and when we bring very great contents, and then every platform we can sustain ourselves, and we can adjust with the situation. Thank you.
Yeah, I feel that the community radio stations and community networks can work side by side, and that was a very good example from the Maori community in New Zealand. We are too working over here on a certain project on restoring language of indigenous tribal people here. So the community radio stations and community networks can reside side by side, or they can work together in parallel in a particular location. And I think one supports the other. Whereas if it is, and both of them support offline networks also. So that's one of the major advantages of it. That both the radio station and the network can be an offline network, enabling services to the people as well as an online thing. Yeah, that's.
Thank you, everyone. And thank you, the floor as well, those who have put up the questions and the thoughts. Thanks, Carlos, and thanks the one who has mentioned the wonderful story about the Maori community in New Zealand.
Thank you everyone for coming to this very enriching session on community radios. Please remember to put in all the highlights of the session to our platform, comment.aprigf.asia. We need you to shape our synthesis document, so all this really good discussion we've had, please put it in. For everybody joining us online and also all our lovely online speakers, thank you very much. Please enjoy your lunch in this on site, and then up next we have the closing plenary in Plenary Hall P1, and this would be, let me just double check, and it will be at 1:30, so please enjoy your lunch. Thank you.